This video is going to be different. I have more to share with the world than just how to land six-figure DevOps jobs. That is what I am good at, that's what I do, and where I make videos about with love. But many people have been asking about other things as well. So I mentioned in a previous video how I struggled with addiction and how I went from going from a nurse in a dead-end job to becoming a very successful engineer and now a businessman as well. And people were curious about this. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing a few stories about my personal life. This is going to get personal, but the theme is that you can change your life in a year. And I'm not going to show you instances of my own life where my life changed completely in the span of 1 year. I'm going to share a few stories, and hopefully they can help you, they can inspire you, because when I look around me with friends that I have, people I know, I see them and they're doing the same job, the same work, with the same people. They're at like 5% of their potential, and something in me wants to help them and tell them there's more to life than what you're doing here. There's more that you can do, because I personally believe that it's very important to constantly reinvent yourself and to keep pushing your own boundaries and looking for the next thing, keep challenging yourself. And I see them, I want to tell them, but you can't, because you cannot help a patient who doesn't want help, right? So in this video, I'm going to be sharing those things, and maybe you have some value out of this. So there are 3 moments or 3 years in my life that I am going to talk about today. The first of them is when I got sober. So I'll talk a bit about my history with addiction and how I changed my life in 1 year, about in that sense. I'm going to share a bit about when I was starting my business and becoming a business owner and how that has changed my life in 1 year. And the third one is going to be also about my DevOps career transition, how my life completely changed in 1 year. You can change your life completely in 1 year. And this, of course, is a topic that is on people's minds now because it's the beginning of the year, and somehow society decided that this is when you make New Year's resolutions. We pick a moment in the calendar, and this is somehow when we start to become serious and make goals for ourselves. I live my life independent from these cycles. I don't do New Year resolutions. I basically make resolutions every single day because I'm always optimizing. I'm always striving for excellence in everything I do. I always want to be the best version of myself in any activity or any goal that I set for myself. And New Year's resolutions are bullshit, but this is when people are thinking about it. So this is why I'm making this video right now, because most of my audience is going to be more receptive to this kind of content, I think. So the first time that I completely changed my life in 1 year was when I got sober. And yeah, this is going to be personal, and it's not easy for me to talk about this on the public internet, but I'm doing this because I want to help people. So I'm going to take a sip of coffee. If you don't have any coffee yet, I invite you to pause the video and grab a coffee, because we're going to be here for a while. This is all just raw, unedited, unscripted, but here we go. I've been addicted to drugs since I was 12 years old. That was the first time when I first smoked my first joint of marijuana. And as a kid, I was always interested in exciting stuff like alcohol, cigarettes. I think I was 9 when I stole my first pack of cigarettes from my dad, and I was already smoking behind the house. I always was naturally attracted to this kind of stuff for some reason. But my father is an alcoholic. Both of my parents smoked, and there was kind of a lot of that kind of stuff going on in my family. So I also was exposed to this very in my childhood, right? Like I see many people growing up who don't even see, like there's no beer in the house, right? And that is completely alien to me, that kind of environment. And that's what the environment that I live in now. Like for the record, I've been sober for 7 years now. So I would never expose my child to something like that if I ever were to become a father. So I always was naturally attracted to this. And living in the Netherlands, marijuana and drugs and all these kinds of things are much more easily accessible than in other parts of the world, I imagine. And I had a few cousins who were older than me, I spent a lot of time with, and this is how I got exposed to this kind of stuff early. Also, when I was young, you could buy tobacco and alcohol when you were 16 years old, legally. So in our neighborhood, we had a supermarket, and back then you still had like independent supermarkets of independent supermarket owners. Not a big chain, but an actual grocer, right? And I figured out as a kid that these people are a little bit more lenient towards age limitations because they needed the money, right? So they would sell tobacco and alcohol to 13-year-old kids because they, and the normal supermarkets would be a little bit more strict with that. But from a very young age, I was able to get access to these kinds of things, and then also, by extension, marijuana and other types of drugs. I'm not saying that I was like smoking marijuana every day since I was 12 years old. Far from it. But that was my first exposure to it, and that's also, yeah, I knew instantly like, wow, this is it. This is what I want to live my life like. And it sounds strange, but it was so exciting to me, this kind of stuff. And yeah, fast forward to when I was 16 years old. At this point, I had a few drug dealers that I knew, and I was able to consistently source marijuana. And addiction is always rooted in pain. People who are addicted to substances, they use them because they have pain inside. There is a pain that they're trying to get away from, and that's where these substances come in. If you look at heroin addicts, the majority of them have been sexually abused as a kid, right? That stat is, I share that stat because people who end up using these kinds of drugs, they get there for a reason, and that reason is pain. So during my youth, certain things happened where I developed a lot of pain. And when I was 16 years old, like I'm not going to go into the details, but I already mentioned that my father is an alcoholic, and then that led to problems in the family, and my parents divorced, and I basically became homeless in the sense that I had places to sleep. I could of course live with my dad and my mom, but I was sort of just roaming around and living from a backpack, living with friends, because being at home was very painful, and because my father, being in the state that he was not a father figure to me anymore, but he was someone who needed care. He was weak. And if you know anything about Freudian psychology, then you know that having a weak father figure in the beginning of your life can have massive implications as well. So that time was psychologically, looking back to it, it's amazing that I got through it the way I did. But I was in a lot of pain. And in order to cope with that pain, I smoked marijuana mainly. That was my main thing. When I was sitting at school, I was doing high school at the time, and the only way I noticed that I could actually sit still in school and focus and to turn off this constant stream of emotions and thoughts and just agonizing thoughts. The only way I could turn it off was to smoke marijuana. So I did. I smoked marijuana, and that way I actually managed to get through high school and later, by extension, university. I was using these drugs as a way to calm down my mind, to be able to sleep at night. If I didn't have access to these substances, I was unable to sleep. I could not fall asleep, at least not at human times. Like, I would go to bed and lie there, and the mind would start streaming. And eventually, by pure exhaustion, you fall asleep at 4 a.m. or so. But then I have to get up at 6 a.m. to go to school on the bicycle. So I actually functioned better in the sense that when I was using drugs, because I was able to concentrate, I got relatively good grades. And I was basically able to pacify myself, because when I didn't do that, like you can see I'm a metalhead. I played metal guitar. I have this, like, you may not think this, but I have this very boisterous, aggressive side to me that you won't see when you know me. But when I later graduated from smoking marijuana to abusing alcohol, in Dutch we have this saying, kwaaie dronk. So a person who gets drunk but then gets very angry. I don't know if they have a phrase for that in your language, but some people, when they consume a lot of alcohol, they become very unpleasant. They become very aggressive and angry, and they start attacking even your best friends. I can't tell you how many times I've woken up with a complete blackout, not having no recollection of what happened the night before. And then you would get phone calls, and it's like, oh yeah, you were very, I would tell people things. I would like curse at them, and I love these people. There's no seed in me that would cause me to attack them for some reason, but there's a certain aggression inside, probably because of all of this pain and anger that then somehow comes out when you get blind drunk, right? So this phenomenon of becoming angry when you're very drunk. We say that in Dutch, a kwaaie dronk. Yeah, that's just how we say it. And I eventually developed into consuming more and more alcohol, also at home. And at some point, I can't believe I'm saying this online, but at some point I was at a stage where I was working as a project manager at the time in a machining company in Norway. So at this time I was living in Norway, and I was working at a machining company. I was the project manager. I was in charge of a complete product line. So I did well for myself in that sense. I was successful. But on Friday I would come home and I would buy multiple bottles of vodka, and then I would start drinking, and then I would wake up on Monday morning having no memories of what I did the entire weekend, and then going back to work. And that started to become a pattern. And that is a place in life where I never, ever want to get back to. Yeah, it's obviously not easy to talk about this, so I don't think I'm gonna dig much deeper into that right now. Maybe if you like, if this somehow helps you in the end of this video, if you somehow resonate with this, or you appreciate me sharing these stories, then please comment down below, and I will share. I will tell more if it helps other people maybe recognize their own problems, right? So let me know down below in the comments. Because if it helps people, I am more than happy to continue and dig deeper. But I was at a point where, like at to a certain point, I was a functional addict, you could say. Yes, I was smoking marijuana every day. Yes, I was drinking myself blind drunk on the weekends, but I wasn't doing anything during those weekends. I was just in front of the TV watching stuff, right? It's not that I was, I wasn't going out very much in that sense. And I was basically just tranquilizing myself and hiding my own feelings. And the reason why I was drinking so much was I had a few relationships. I mean, that's not the reason, but apart from my own pain that I experienced from my youth and like the inherent, the baseline pain, certain things happened in my life also with relationships and women that basically just dragged me down and down and down, and I became very depressed. And at that point, then I realized this is not going in the right direction. So I took a step back, and as a true addict, right, then you start bargaining like, oh, maybe the drinking is not so good. Maybe I will just go back to just smoking marijuana. So you do go through these phases. So I was a functional addict. I was making good money. I was a functional human being in the sense that I showed up to work. I did my responsibilities. Like at work, I was always very alert. I was working a lot of overtime. I was working 60-hour weeks standard. And I was doing well in that sense. But as soon as I got home, then things went wrong. So then I went into more smoking, and as a kind of a reaction, I went chasing women a lot more instead of relationships. I was, the stories, oh my God, but I was more promiscuous, let's say it like that, and having fun, meeting and dating several or multiple women, and exploring that kind of side of life too. And I came to a point that also that became an addiction, right? I have a very I'm very sensitive to addiction. So I came to a point where, again, I was drunk. I don't know how many, the 10th date that month, the 10th adventure. And I remember sitting on the porch. It was in the middle of the winter I think it was like February in Norway. So this is like dark. It gets light at maybe 10 a.m. and it's dark again at 1 p.m. Like dark times. And I was on the porch drunk. I remember looking up at the sky, and like I'm a very philosophical, theoretical mind, right? So I'm always reflecting on, and that's also one of the reasons why I got so drunk and depressed, because I didn't see any meaning to life, right? I was just working, and I was very much, I do a lot of reading, philosophy. I explored religion and never found the answers, right? And very much aware of the scale of the universe and how small we are. And here I am on a small grain of sand in the galaxy. And all I'm doing is chasing women, drinking and taking drugs and making money. Is this really all there is to life? Is this really what there is? And I remember staring up in the sky and feeling such complete lack of meaning and anything that I thought, this is not the way. This cannot be the way. This cannot be my purpose in life. This cannot be why I am here. This cannot be the purpose of life, to just waste it away on hedonism and smoking and drinking and chasing women. I decided that if that is the purpose of life, then I might as well quit. I don't want to live my life that way. I probably shouldn't go as far as saying that I was suicidal, but suffice to say that I completely lacked any form of meaning in my life at that point. So at that point, I decided that, you know what, I need to find some sort of system in life where I get more meaning. And can't remember where the exact book I got this from, but I always read book after book. I'm a big reader, very intellectual. And I read this book, and it had a study of certain elements that happy people have, right? I think it's like 3 or 5 elements. It was like physical labor, so always having until old age. So the example was that Japanese people very often have vegetable gardens, and when still in their 90s, they're still like picking roots and that kind of thing, which is very different from here in Western society, where people in their 70s, they tend to just sit down and watch TV all day and just atrophy. So it was physical labor. It was community, so having a very active community life, so participating in society, even as an older person. And the third of them was some sort of spiritual practice, which I was lacking. I was a diehard atheist for most of my life. I was raised in a somewhat Christian family, not very serious practitioners, but I was exposed to church when I was younger, and at Christmas we went to church. My mom is I would say, a Christian, but it never really clicked for me. But I tried. I tried. I studied it. I read Christian texts. In university, I studied Islam for a semester, so I have an academic grounding in Islamic studies for 1 semester, because I wanted to see, well, like a massive percentage of the world population believes in this religion. Why not study it for a while and see, maybe it's even something for me? Well, it didn't resonate, of course, so I did not go into that direction either. But I realized that night, looking up at the sky, that I needed some sort of spiritual practice in my life. And for all the options available to me, then Buddhism became the one that I wanted to try. I had to make this choice. So if there is one spiritual practice that I should do, or that I want to at least give a shot, which one of them is it going to be? And I chose Buddhism in that moment. So I committed to it. I said, you know what? I'm going to try it out. I'm going to see what it's like to be a practicing Buddhist and see if this is going to give me meaning in life. So I started practicing, I started meditating, and now we are going to get to the point of changing your life in 1 year. This was in February, and I decided I'm just going to try. If having a spiritual element in your life is required for long-term happiness into old age, then obviously I will have to try something. So I did. Started meditating every day and studying Buddhism, reading the texts and going deeper into it. Eventually, I landed with the forest tradition of Ajahn Chah. That is my tradition. I consider Ajahn Chah my teacher, although he has been dead for a long time. And I found my spiritual practice in that. Buddhism is the solution, the spiritual solution to me, because the Buddha has this beautiful metaphor of the goldsmith, right? The goldsmith takes like raw ore, and then by smelting it, he purifies the ore. So the ore at first is dirty and has all sorts of elements that are not supposed to be in the gold, but eventually the goldsmith has beautiful pure gold. And what the Buddha says is, take my words and become that goldsmith and filter it. Go to the purity. See for yourself and go deep as you can. Don't just take my word, but see for yourself and refine it. And eventually you decide. And that whole idea resonated with me so much that the spiritual leader of a tradition that way is not saying I'm right. It's not saying the Bible is the word of God and Christianity is the one true religion, which is what true Christians will tell you. There's none of that. It's saying, here's a solution to your problem, which is suffering. This is the solution I propose. Go and see for yourself whether it works. And I'm not going to go deeper into Buddhism, but basically there are the Four Noble Truths, and the first noble truth of Buddhism is there is suffering. Life as a human on this planet is always going to be bound up with suffering. And Buddhism offers a way out of that suffering, to release from suffering. So here I was as a drug addict having an intense amount of suffering, and here suddenly I'm discovering it's not a religion, a philosophy that is the first thing that the philosophy says is there is suffering. It's like, oh wow, life is actually always bound up with suffering. It's not weird that I'm having this pain. I always thought that I should not be feeling this pain, but guess what? It's part of human experience to have pain, to get sick, old, and die. Nobody escapes that. So there is going to be suffering in your life at some point. So, and then the Buddha shows you a way to escape that suffering. So already I was thinking, okay, well, this is interesting. I'm going to go deeper into this. So I did, and I started practicing, and then I discovered the 5 noble precepts. So which is basically 5, they're not rules, but they are recommendations that the Buddha gives for lay people. So people who are not, excuse me, so people who aren't monastics, but people living normal lives. And he gives them 5 recommendations of living a good life. The first one being not killing. So you should not take life, not even living creatures. So I don't even kill mosquitoes. It is not lying. So right speech, right? So not lying, not gossiping, being careful and honest with your speech. The third one is no sexual abuse. So no cheating, that kind of thing. No sexual abuse. Actually, I got the order wrong here, but the fourth one being not stealing, so not taking what is not given. And the fifth one is not consuming intoxicating substances. In other words, being sober. And that was something that was very refreshing to me, that here's a philosophy that is actually recommending to me that I do not consume these substances. But because remember, I am a addict here, functioning as an addict, thinking that this is the way to go. This is how I should live my life, because it had already enabled me to gain relative success in my life by stopping these thoughts in my head and allowing me to sleep. So I saw consuming these substances as a positive thing, right? Because you self-justify. But here is, I'm already getting so much value out of Buddhism, and here is the Buddha recommending to me that I not take these substances. So I said that I was going to try this and go for it. And that's also when I decided, well, if this is what the Buddha recommends, then I should also try. And to be honest with you, like I'm saying now, I was an addict, but at that point, I didn't see myself as an addict. I didn't see it as a problem that I was using these substances. I did not see it as a negative thing that I was doing this. So I never really realized that I was so addicted until I tried stopping it, until I tried not doing it. So at this point, I was about 25 years old, and I started when I was 12. So that's like 12, 13 years of almost daily drug and alcohol use without ever considering that maybe I should not be doing this every day. Maybe this is wrecking my body. Yeah. Looking back, I don't understand how I could think that way, but yeah, that's how the mind works. So here I am, and I decide, okay, I'm going to try not taking these substances and get sober. And that's when I realized that I actually had a problem, that I couldn't do it. So I would do it for a week. I would go absolutely insane and go back to using. And yeah, this basically triggered a cycle of trying and failing of about a year, where I realized I was addicted, and I would like make it to about 3 months, and then I would stop. I would fall back, I would relapse, and I would start taking these substances again. So Buddhism changed my life in the sense that it made me aware of my problems, and it gave me a solution in terms of meaning, because now I had meaning. I was more concerned with my karma. So I was not living for myself anymore. I was now starting to live for the benefit of others, right? In some sense, I was ready to basically, I was basically ready to commit suicide. And then instead of doing that, I decided, well, I might as well just dedicate my life to the service of others. I'm not living for myself anymore. I'm just going to dedicate my life to helping others. And in this process, while I was trying to get sober, I lost my job. I was working in the oil industry in Norway. And in 2016, OPEC, which is this council of oil countries, they decided not to regulate the oil price anymore for a while. And overnight, about 120,000 people lost their jobs in Norway, because Norway has a huge oil industry. And when the oil price goes down, they will actually stop $1 billion worth of projects and wait until the oil price is back up again. So it's a very volatile industry in that sense. So I lost my job. And this was in the middle of my Buddhism exploration. I was practicing maybe for about a year at that point. And this is when I was in Norway, I was unemployed. And through the unemployment sort of trajectory that you get into, because Norway is a very socialist country, right? So you get welfare benefits, but I'm not someone who can just sit around at home and do nothing, right? So I decided that I was in this unemployment. So you go to this office and then you have to report in and you have to talk about what are you going to do. And then you have to start applying for other jobs, right? And they said, what do you want to do? And then I said, well, I want to help other people. And then they said, well, we have this program where we take people and educate them to become nurses. Would you be interested in that? And I was again in this stage of dedicating my life in service to others, and I realized, yes, this is what I want to do. I wanted to do something for other people every day. I wanted to make a difference in the world. That office, I actually said maybe I can teach English to or Norwegian to people who move to Norway or something like that, because I speak Norwegian fluently. I'm sort of a genius with languages, so I can learn them very quickly, and I really wanted to help people. So they offered me this, and I said yes. So then I started working as a nurse, and I went from being a project manager and being in charge of a group of people. Like, I was 26 years old, but I was boss of people who were like 3 times as old as I was, and telling them what to do. But I quickly ascended in leadership in that sense. And here I was going from that kind of position to helping old ladies on the toilet in the hospital. And I was working with dead people who died, and then I would clean the corpse, and I would help the family and arrange, things around that, and having rooms of crying people, that kind of thing. I was helping people with open wounds, and you won't believe what I've seen. But I went from that to an extremely humbling position. And again, I went from being in control over something to a complete noob again, right? Like, I'm working with 40-year-old women who have been nurses for 20 years in their whole life. And now I am like the junior on the job, even though I'm like a 2-meter tall guy with a deep voice. And now I am the junior. Like, usually it's like kids that have these positions in these situations, right? So it was a very humbling experience. And through that, my life completely changed. I was living now in service of others, and I decided I was still struggling with becoming sober, but my life completely changed when I decided to practice Buddhism and to humble myself and to stop living for my own gain and my own pleasure, only thinking about my own pleasure, but rather thinking like, how can I make the world better around me? What is the way that I could contribute to the world? And that became my goal. And this also, believe it or not, but when you start thinking this way, when you start helping people and making them happy, you will be very surprised that you also become very happy. And this is a very strange thing for a Western mind, that most people don't understand that you first have to help other people in order to gain that happiness yourself. But this is why I now also help people land DevOps jobs, right? It is such a joy to me. I get so much satisfaction out of people coming to me, asking me for my mentorship, and then helping them and seeing them succeed the way I did. So it's a beautiful thing. So Buddhism changed my life completely in a year. And here I was struggling with the addiction. And then at that point, I realized, okay, here I am working as a nurse on the job, trying to make other people healthy. But how can I take care of other people when I cannot even take care of myself, right? So I decided that in order to take care of other people, I need to learn how to take care of myself. and I need to learn how to get sober. So again, I tried, and 3 months in, I was this close of relapsing again, and I was now at the point where I was like getting physical things, and all I could do was just lie in bed and just feel my whole body screaming to take something, to escape from the pain that I always constantly experience all the time. My whole body just convulsing in the craving for taking something. I'll never forget the moment. And I was like this close and thinking, I need to take something again, because this is too much. But in that moment, instead of doing that, I did something that I was not used to doing, and that is I asked for help. I've always done things on my own, very independent, very self-sufficient. I had been living in Norway for 7 years alone at that time. I left my family in the Netherlands, and I was going to make my own fortune in a different country, living there completely alone. And yes, I made friends for life there, but essentially I was living alone there. And at that point, I realized I needed to ask for help. So I did. I called one of these numbers that they have. Many countries have this, where you can ask for help, and then there's someone at the line, and you can say, yeah, I'm addicted and I need to go somewhere. And that's when this person recommended Alcoholics Anonymous to me, and by extension, Narcotics Anonymous. So I called those hotlines, and then I asked for help there, and then I attended one of these meetings, and for the next 5 years or so, I was attending these meetings and doing voluntary work there, and that's how I got sober. I went into these meetings several times a week and sharing my experiences, what I was struggling with. And up until this point, I had never really met someone who was actually sober. And because everyone I knew, all of my friends, they would either drink every single weekend. When we got together, there was always alcohol going on. I actually didn't know anyone who actually was completely sober. And here I finally found a group of people who were living sober and who were doing the same things, who were struggling with what I was struggling with. And it was a complete new eye-opening experience to me. I was sitting next to someone, and wow, this guy hasn't done anything for 2 years. He hasn't used any drugs for 2 years. How is this possible? And just seeing that it's possible made me realize it is possible. This is the place that I need to be. And now I am that person, right? I still go to these meetings, not because I need them anymore, because you're never cured from addiction. I am an addict. I will always be an addict. And I always have to be extremely careful with everything I do, that I do not get that relapse. But what I can say is that I am completely free from the craving of drugs and alcohol at this point in time. I never sit around at home anymore and think, oh, I would like to have a drink, or wouldn't it be nice to smoke a joint now? I have not had that thought in several years now. So it is possible. Like, if you are watching this, and I know that many people in my audience smoke weed every day because it's very common among software engineers and DevOps engineers who like to sit inside and play video games. Like, if you are doing that, then first of all, I strongly recommend you reflect on whether you're doing that because you want to or because you're actually addicted. And secondly, I want to impress upon you that there is hope. There is a way out of this. It is possible to gain freedom from addiction using tools like Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, completely for free. You don't need to go into rehab, spending tens of thousands of dollars. I didn't do that either. And yes, it was freaking hard. Like, the first 2 years, getting sober was honestly the hardest thing I've done in my entire life. And the first 2 years were hell. It was living hell. I was in so much pain every single day. There wasn't a moment in time where I didn't think about taking drugs or alcohol, but it was just one day at a time, 5 minutes at a time. And going through this experience made me a very strong human being. And that is also why I think I ended up coaching other people, because people recognize that, right? People see me as someone who has to say and someone who done a few things in life. And to be honest, like for someone who is 35 years old, I do have a lot of life experience, having overcome these kinds of problems already, which is why I'm so good at coaching people as well, and why people come to me and get the results they want. So that is how the first story I wanted to share about how you can absolutely change your life completely in 1 year. I did it. After 13 years of daily use, I turned my life around. I got sober. I didn't do it alone. I asked for help. I became humble. I changed my career to a nurse. And here I was going from being someone's boss to helping old ladies on the toilet and working with corpses and that kind of thing. But I was so happy during that time. I was really happy. I felt meaning in life. And in the span of 1 year, I went from blind drunk every weekend to a practicing Buddhist, working as a nurse, helping old ladies in the hospital, and feeling great about it. And I was sober, finally. So that's the first story I wanted to tell about changing your life in 1 year. The second story is about KubeCraft and how I went from being a simple wage worker to a successful business owner now. So the order of these stories are a little bit different because I'm also going to talk about how I became a DevOps engineer in the end. But this one I choose to tell first because it's so interesting to me how this went. You see, I've always liked making videos. Like when I was I think I was 16 at that time. YouTube was new then. So that's like 20 years ago. YouTube was still new then. Is it 20 years? Yeah, it's 20 years. And at that point, I'm very good at playing guitar. I don't play guitar these days, but I could play like Cannibal Corpse, Slayer, Metallica, Death. I could play entire albums from memory with the solos and everything. And I would make videos of me playing. And I was actually quite big on YouTube. I had thousands of views on my videos in the early days, even with I don't know, it's maybe not even 720p webcams. And I was recording the guitar with the webcam microphone. So the quality was horrible, but people loved it. So yeah. Anyway, I've always made videos. But when I changed my career to DevOps, I also started documenting that process in videos. And when my channel started picking up, my videos started to gain a lot of views, I realized, well, people are now actually commenting and asking, hey, you're making videos about Vim and NeoVim. Don't you have a course about this? Can't you teach us some more? And this is when I realized, okay, maybe I need to start a business. Like I always had the dream of having some sort of side hustle beside my work, right? Up until that point, I had tried so many things. one of them being RuneScape bot farming, but I had websites, affiliate marketing. I was always trying to have something on the side. And now my YouTube channel was going well, and I realized people are asking for something here. There's demand here. Let me just start. And this is when I started the school community. And this is how we started. It's now January. It's actually, we started at the end of February. So that's almost 2 years ago now. Wow. Oh my God. 2 years ago. The time goes so fast. But that is when we started, me and my brother. And I asked my brother to help me because I am such a nerd, right? I'm tech. I know the command line. I know the tech stuff, but business, I don't know anything. I didn't know anything about that at that point. Marketing, sales, blah, blah, blah. I just want to code, right? That is the thing. So I asked my brother to help me with this, and he wanted something too, so we did it together. So it started with just me creating the school community, and I created like one course about my configuration because that's what people wanted to know. They wanted to learn Vim from me. So I created that, and people started coming. And I still remember, like, to host a school community it costs $100 a month, right? So at that point in my life, I was working as a DevOps engineer, but a $100 a month subscription was actually something that I had to think a lot about because I had financial obligations. But I decided for myself that, you know what? This is probably maybe a pivotal moment in my life. And again, changing your life in 1 year. I'm going to set aside $1,200. I'm going to try to make it as a businessman, or at least make it profitable for 1 year. And I'm going to invest the $1,200, so 1 year's worth of school subscription. And I'm going to see if I can at least make that money back, right? So that is the risk that I took in that sense, and I committed to trying it. Well, I think it was not even a week, and then we were profitable already. So it was like, okay, this is amazing. Clearly, we are doing something that people want. And the school community grew. It was nowhere near what it is right now. It was mainly about getting direct access to me and my configurations, etc., and helping people with that. But then people started coming, and they were asking, "Hey, you are a DevOps engineer. Why can't you help me with that? I love your stuff on YouTube, but I have no clue. Can't you make a course about Kubernetes, for example?" So I did. And then what started happening was that the members were so positive about the stuff that I was creating. Like people were actually calling me and saying, "You really have a talent for teaching, Misha. You have to do more of this because I'm learning so much." People were saying that they had done over 10 Udemy courses about certain topics, and they didn't get anything out of it. And as soon as they saw my stuff, then it finally clicked for them. It said, the depth of teaching that you have and the approach, the hands-on approach that you have, this is what people want. This is how finally I found a teacher that actually makes things clear to me in a practical, actionable way. People were saying this to me. And this is how I randomly stumbled upon the fact that I apparently have certain gifts in terms of teaching, that I am actually a pretty good teacher. And so I did more of that. And mind you, I was working full-time as a DevOps engineer at this point. So here in this stage, I was waking up at 4 a.m. and I would work from 4 to 9 in the morning. So I had 5 hours of work in the morning. Then I would work my 9 to 5. And after my 9 to 5, I would work from 5 to 9 to, create more courses and everything. So for months, for well over a year, I was doing this. I was working 4 to 9 in the morning, and then from 5 to 9 in the evening. And then in the weekends, I would work from 4 a.m. until 9 in the evening, creating courses, doing coaching, supporting people, building up the YouTube channel, everything. Like I've been working as a beast for multiple years now, ever since I started in my DevOps career, and I'm going to get more into that. But like 70-hour work weeks are the standard, and I work every single day. And the results are there because now KubeCraft has grown from a niche sort of private fan club to the KubeCraft Career Accelerator, where people come, they join, and within 90 days they have a state-of-the-art portfolio, including a website with several enterprise-grade Kubernetes projects on there. And people are landing jobs every single week in KubeCraft. Like last year, we have over 200 documented cases of landing jobs, but that is only the people that tell us. Like it happens so often that I'm having a message with someone and they will say, "Oh, by the way, I landed a job." So we don't even see 10% of the jobs that are being landed because of us, and not to mention of the stuff that we do for free on YouTube. So from starting, taking a risk and not knowing where to go, just trying to start a business, to going to the number one place to become a DevOps engineer on the internet, it happened because of two things. Of coincidence, I did not know I was a gifted teacher at that point, but because I exposed myself to this risk and I just decided to go for it. And secondly, because of the extreme amounts of work that it took to build it, and to work hard on something without knowing that you are going to get the result. Those three things combined have changed my life completely in the span of 1 year, because I was doing KubeCraft. Then during that year, I also decided I wanted to go freelance, because I could see that working as a full-time employee, that was not going to be working out that well if my KubeCraft work was going to scale, if this was going to go well, which it did. So I went freelance, I started working contracts, and I did not have a buffer saved up, so I actually did not have much money, and it forced me to seek out things, and I was doing contracts, and it went really well in that sense that KubeCraft started growing, I could focus on my own things, and I was working as an independent business owner. And now, in the second year, we have absolutely mastercrafted the whole KubeCraft curriculum to be the system, end-to-end system to land a DevOps job, and it's working so well. Yesterday I talked to a guy. He hasn't been a member of KubeCraft for a month yet, and already he has landed a new job with a $50K raise, $50,000. And I told you I'm a Buddhist. I don't lie. I cannot lie. This stuff is actually happening. I can't show you the DM because of privacy reasons, but I mean, if you just go to KubeCraft and check out the win section, then you see that we are landing jobs all the time. So Florian, he went from internship to freelancer now. He had no experience in the industry. Alex landed a new job 3 days ago. Christoph landed a DevOps contract. Charlene, it is such a good system, and it's something that me and my brother built together But this has also, again, changed my life completely in 1 year. But again, it didn't go by itself. It took a lot of work in order to get to this point. And continuing on that theme, the third time that I changed my life completely in the span of a year was when I decided to become a DevOps engineer. So I told you that I became a nurse, right? I was working as a nurse, and after a few years, I was happy, but I understood that I was not going to be able to do this for the rest of my life. That is because I am very introverted. And this video here, recording this and talking for so long, like I'm going to need to recover from this for like 2 days now, right? This is not a normal or a healthy thing for me to do over a long period of time, because I need to be alone. I need to have that rest, and I need to be calm, and I'm very introverted. So, and I discovered this, that during my work as a nurse, at first it energized me in helping the people, but over time I could notice that my energy was draining and draining and draining. And physically I was in good shape, and I was taking good care of myself, and I was sober, but I was getting more and more exhausted. And that's because with everything I do, I want to be the best at it. And I was at this work and always being there with the patients and socially being there, engaging with them and trying to make their day a little bit better. And that was just a big drain on me. And I realized I couldn't do this work for the rest of my life. Now, combined with this was also that I was getting deeper and deeper in my Buddhist practice. My meditation practice started to reach stages where I was experiencing things that I did not understand and that I needed help with. I was reaching stages in meditation that I could not understand, and I needed help with. So any good meditation book or teacher will tell you, you need to find a teacher. So I started seeking out a teacher, and that is how I got introduced to Buddhist monasteries. And I started visiting a Buddhist monastery in Norway, and I did that for several years. And yeah, I'm not going to tell that whole story, but as I was working as a nurse and getting deeper and deeper into my spiritual practice, an opportunity came up for me to become a Buddhist monk at the monastery that I was visiting and spending a lot of time at. And I decided to do that. So for 2 years, I served as a Buddhist monk in a Buddhist monastery. And I canceled all of my bank accounts. I got rid of all of my earthly possessions. I shaved my hair. I shaved my beard. And I was practicing completely celibate. I was completely celibate for 2 years. No internet, no TV. And I went deep, and I grew a lot from that. Actually, that is maybe the fourth story. I'm not going to tell it now, but maybe you're going to see a pattern. But in so many times, I've completely reinvented myself and changed my life in the span of 1 year. And I'm only 35 years old at this point. So what I'm trying to say here is that if I can do this, you can do this too. So I spent 2 years in a Buddhist monastery, and also there I realized that this was not going to be the thing that I could do for the rest of my life, for reasons that I am not going to get into in this video. If you're interested in hearing more about that story, I'm happy to tell you. Drop me a comment, give me a like, and tell me what you want to hear. I'm happy to share more about it if it helps you. And so I decided, yes, I'm going to leave the monastery. And then it was like, well, what the heck am I going to do now, right? Here I was. I had a fragmented CV. I went from project manager to nurse to monk. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. I did know that I loved working with computers. I did know that I wanted to, like in my free time, I mentioned I was doing like RuneScape bot farming, and I've done stories about this as well, but if you want the full story, let me know. But to keep it short, I was always working with computers in my free time. I was coding Linux. I was tinkering with this stuff when I wasn't drunk. That was basically my hobby. And I always thought that, damn, why didn't I study computer science? What a mistake. If I hadn't been that drunk and if I had made something of myself, I should have studied computer science and I could have worked as a software engineer or something like that, because that's the stuff that I loved. And then I realized that, you know what? I've already gotten sober. If I can do that, then I can land a tech job. I can do it. It is possible. I tried a few times before that. Actually, when I got unemployed and when the nurse thing came up, I actually in that point also tried landing a tech job already, but I constantly get rejected because I didn't have any experience and I didn't have a CS degree. And especially in Norway, it was hard because I lived remotely in the countryside and like remote work wasn't really a thing. So yeah, it was hard. Many rejections there. But I realized that if I make this my life's mission to land a tech job, then I can do it. I can do it. And I did. So it was a long process and it was very, very hard with lots of rejections. But eventually I figured out some ways where I could leverage the things that I was doing in my free time to actually document that I had production experience as in IT. And I figured out ways in terms of personal branding and how you can get your CV on the top of the stack at the desk of the hiring manager instead of being just 1 in 100 in a CV pile. And this is the secret sauce that I teach my students in KubeCraft, and this is why it works so well. This is why people who come to me actually land jobs from scratch, right? And this is not, you won't learn this at any of the other places. These big course platforms, I'm not going to teach you say any names, or boot camps. Like maybe they teach you some outdated tech and they will teach you a few projects, but they won't actually teach you how to land a job. And that is something completely different from learning the tech. You don't get stuck in tutorial hell. Landing a tech job, 25% of that is actually the tools and the techniques. The rest of it is very different. It all has to do with soft skills, marketing, how you present yourself, and negotiation as well. Getting hired is one thing, but getting hired for a 200K annual salary is something completely different, completely dependent on what you bring to the table and whether you have the balls to negotiate. That's the stuff that we also teach in KubeCraft. So I figured out a way, and again, I went from having no experience with a fragmented CV, coming out of the monastery. So I was in the absolute worst position ever to land a tech job, but through sheer force of will and working extremely hard and figuring out a few techniques, I managed to land my first position. And I started as a junior DevOps engineer with the City Council of Amsterdam, so in the city of Amsterdam. So this is a government agency, and government agencies usually have like junior or traineeship programs, that kind of thing. And through extreme amounts of work and persuasion, I managed to land my first job. And when I got it, that I didn't stop there, right? I went at it with so much zeal and so much passion because this was my dream. Like I've been thinking, like wanting this for years, and now finally I was working with Linux, and on my job. I was so freaking happy. I reached my life's goal at that point, right? And I kept at it. I did not stop there. I did not go there and think, well, I'm here now. This is my nice little job, and just going to stay here and get complacent now. No, I kept studying. Like, even while I was on the job, I was still studying 2 hours every single day because we were working with Ansible, manually deploying Docker containers on Linux servers and basically building our own homegrown Kubernetes in Ansible. And then one day I discovered Kubernetes, and we were not using it. The team was not thinking about it at all. So I had to learn that on my own in 6 months. During my weekends and evening studies, I managed to secure my CKA, even though my bosses, my mentors, they were all saying, you should not be doing this. It's too hard. This is not for juniors. You cannot do this. And whenever someone says you can't do it or it's too hard for you, that's actually when I will prove you wrong. And maybe in some ways, maybe that was good mentorship, saying it was too hard for me because I react in that way. But in any case, I managed to learn the Kubernetes skills that I needed. And again, so there's two pivots here. One of them is that I managed to, in the span of 1 year, go from ex-monk to junior DevOps engineer, basically securing a career for the rest of my life. But then even when I was in that career, I didn't stop. I went and decided my team is not using Kubernetes, but I know that this is, I fell completely in love with it the first time I used it. And I realized this is the way, this is the future. And this is like 3 years ago. So Kubernetes now has 80% adoption. It has 171K average salary. It was not that way when I was doing it. And it was not sure that this was going to be the thing. But here we are. It is the thing. If you're not learning Kubernetes today, you're falling behind. And that's why KubeCraft is completely based around Kubernetes, and that's why we land jobs, because that is where the demand actually is. It's not the market, it's you actually. So in my evening studies, in my weekend studies, I wasn't doing anything else. Again, ever since I came out of the monastery, I've been working 10 to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, on my goals. First my career, then when I got my career, I went for Kubernetes, and when I got Kubernetes and I got my CKA, I went from my first job where I was at for about 1.5 years, and because I had the Kubernetes skills, I managed to secure a position as a Kubernetes consultant, and I doubled my salary overnight. Doubled. And this happened because, again, I changed my life in a year. I went for it, I worked hard, and I went my own way. And here I am, 5 years later. I am now a senior DevOps engineer specialized in Kubernetes, now spending my time as CTO of my own company, dedicating my time towards teaching others to walk the same path. So I was going to tell 3 stories, but here you see there are actually 5 or 6 moments where I changed my career, my entire life in 1 year. And I'm here to tell you, you can do the same. If you're thinking like, oh, I cannot do that, or I don't have the energy, or this guy, he's smart, or he's some sort of genius, I'm not. I'm actually not very smart. Like I smoked drugs for the first 13 years of my adult life. A truly smart person doesn't really do that, right? So I'm not a genius. I'm not extremely smart. What I do have, though, is a strong work ethic. And I think this comes from the work that I had to do when I got sober. I accumulated a very high pain tolerance, and I learned to do work without seeing the results immediately. So those are the three main key factors here that if you cultivate these next three skills, then you are going to get very far in life. The first of them being consistency. And for me, this came from getting sober, because you have to work on becoming sober every single day. When you do the 12-step program, it's not just going to meetings. You also have to do actual work in writing, and it is a whole process that you go through, doing volunteer work, but being consistent at it. And the main thing when getting sober is that you cannot have that first drink. You cannot have that first joint. So you have to be consistent in the sense that you have to show up to do the work without getting anything back for it, and remaining consistent with that, and consistently not taking any drugs. Then for me, it was getting consistent studies in. When I decided to change my career to tech, I had to consistently study 8 hours a day and crafting my portfolio of projects in order to land that first job. When I was working as a DevOps engineer, I had to consistently study every single evening, every single weekend. Instead of playing video games, going out with friends, or having fun, or chasing women, like, reflect on that. Like, for 2 years, while I was already on the job, I already had the job, I was studying every single night for 2+ hours, and every single weekend for 10 to 12 hours a day. Like, sometimes people look at my LinkedIn and my CV and say, oh, he's only been working in the industry for 5 years. But there are senior engineers who have 10% of my knowledge and skills because they do the same things over and over again, right? So maybe on paper you see that I don't have many years of experience, but each of those years is equivalent to 2 to 3 times of the experience that someone usually gets, because just by virtue of hours spent, I have done more work than other seniors of my level. So number one, consistency. The second one is being able to do work without seeing immediate results. So when getting sober for 2 years, I had to, you're told that at some day you will be free from suffering from the craving to use drugs and alcohol. But it takes a lot of faith in order to keep working at that without seeing the result, right? Without knowing that what you're doing is actually the right thing. So it takes an extreme amount of pain, and it takes an extreme pain tolerance and ability to work on something without seeing the results in order to actually do this. And if you can learn this, to work on something that without seeing the results immediately, you will get very far in life. This is also why I am a successful business owner now, because I was able to take the leap, work hard, and work several months from 4 a.m. in the morning to 9 a.m. in the morning, and then from 5 in the evening until 9 in the evening without seeing direct results. And frankly, there I was a bit lucky that I did see the direct results and I got so many good responses. But still, there's no guarantee that I would be able to do this full time at some point, right? I mean, that took a whole year of doing that, working 4 to 9, and then from 5 to 9, and all of the weekends, until I actually knew that I could do this full time. So having a high pain tolerance and knowing that you can do and being able to do work without seeing the results immediately is one of the meta skills here as well. And the third one here is not to get complacent. So I whenever I start to get comfortable, whether that is with technology or with my own sports or health, anytime you feel you are sort of settled and you have things down, then you know that you stop growing and you have to start finding the next thing. And this is not about restlessness. This is not about being unhappy with where you are. It's fine to have a little bit of rest here and there too, but you should always be striving to improve yourself. And this is what I call the craftsman's mindset, that when you choose a craft, you should always continue honing that craft. You don't become a DevOps engineer and then you learn the tools and then you sit back and then cruise. You're going to get outworked by other people like me who have ambition, and you're going to be obsolete in 10 years with AI on the horizon, right? So you always have to keep striving. Strive relentlessly to achieve your goals. And if you don't have any goals, start there. You should always have a goal to strive for. If you're the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. And with that being said, I hope this was valuable to you. And now that I've shared this whole video, I'm going to publish it, but I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it online. So if this has had any positive effect or inspiration on you, then please drop me a comment to get a sense of whether this was actually useful to the world, whether this was time spent, and whether I should do more of this. Because I'm very, as I'm talking to this, you could say that I did not have a normal life. I'm not saying this to say that I'm better than others or anything like that, but normal people don't go from project manager to nurse to Buddhist monk to a successful tech career to business owner in the span of, 10 years, right? That is not a normal life. Normal people go to college, get a job, get married, and that's it. And because I haven't had a normal life, Kelsey Hightower says this thing, you can have senior engineers but junior humans. Well, because of the life I've had, I'm pretty certain I'm not a junior human, far from it. Getting sober after so many years of addiction does something to you. It shapes character. And I have a lot more to share about this, about Buddhism, about how do I do that, right? How do I keep working so hard without burning out? How can I keep pushing forth all of this effort without burning out? Well, there is a lot more to share about this. So if you want to hear more about this, if this was valuable to you, let me know in the comments, and I'm very happy to share more about this. For now, I'm going to end it here, and thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.